The pain he feels when he sees you have stopped. Waiting, something changed in him last week. Not a decision. Not a realization he sat down and arrived at. Nothing he planned or constructed or chose in any conscious way. It happened the way the most significant things in this journey always happen, which is without asking permission, without announcing itself in advance, and at exactly the moment he had convinced himself he had managed his way past the point where you could still do anything to him. He noticed you had stopped waiting. He does not know when it happened. He cannot locate the specific moment because there was not one. It was more like a gradual change in the quality of something he had been monitoring without knowing he was monitoring it. A frequency he had been tracking at the peripheral edge of his attention for months. The particular signal of your orientation toward him, your hope, your readiness to receive him if he moved in your direction. That signal had been there. He did not acknowledge it consciously. He did not think about it the way you have been thinking about this journey. But it was there, the way background sound is there. The kind you only notice when it stops. It stopped. And the quiet it left behind is louder than anything you ever said to him out loud. He has been in that quiet for several days now, and something in him does not know what to do with it. The management strategies that have been working, the distance he has been maintaining, the story he has been telling himself about why the distance is the right choice, about why what you had was not really what it seemed, about why the timing was wrong and the circumstances were impossible and the connection was something he could set down and return to later. That story is running into something it was not built to survive. The story was built for a version of you who was still waiting, and that version of you is gone. If you have felt lately like something in him has shifted, like there is a new quality to the silence from his side, like something that was static has become something that is moving, leave a like and subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Drop the words "I stopped waiting for him" in the comments, because what is happening in him right now, the specific pain that arrives when the person you have been managing your distance from stops being manageable, is exactly what this video is going into. Leave it below. Before we go further, I want to put something directly in front of you. Because if you have reached the place where you genuinely stopped waiting, you are at a turning point that your birth chart has a specific story about. Not twin flames in general, your connection, your karmic architecture with this specific person, your soul contract, and what it contains beneath the surface of what either of you can see from inside it right now. Your chart holds the blueprint of this moment, the specific timing of it, what the universe is building in the space between you while his internal world quietly starts to rearrange itself around your absence. A twin flame union personal reading is built from your coordinates alone. Your name, your date of birth, the exact time you came into this world, your place of birth. From those details, you get a personal audio reading delivered straight to your inbox and a full written report with everything mapped out. The current energy between you, the karmic patterns running underneath the silence, the divine timing in your specific chart, what your soul contract with him actually means at the level neither of you can see from inside the experience of it. You can order yours right now. The link is in the description. If the waiting is genuinely over, your reading is the map of what that means for your journey specifically. Link is in the description. Now, let us go into what is actually happening inside him and why the moment you stopped waiting is one of the most significant moments of this entire connection. He had not realized he was relying on it. That is the part that is difficult to explain from the inside because it does not feel like reliance from the inside. It feels like nothing. It feels like the absence of a concern, which is exactly what it was designed to feel like. The reliance was built into the background architecture of how he had been moving through the past months. Not a thought he returned to, not a plan he consciously maintained, just a structural assumption underneath everything else. She is still there. She is still oriented toward me. The connection is intact from her side. I can continue to hold the distance without the cost of losing it entirely. That structural assumption is what made the distance sustainable for him. Distances are not free. They are not maintained by nothing. the particular kind of distance he has been maintaining. The kind that is not complete severance but is also not real presence, requires a specific condition to remain sustainable. It requires the certainty that what you are distancing from is still there, that the person on the other side of your withdrawal is still holding the space, still organized enough around you that you have not actually lost anything by pulling back. Attachment researchers call this the safe haven assumption. It is the implicit belief operating below the level of conscious thought that the attachment figure will be available when you finally choose to turn toward them, that the withdrawal you are maintaining does not foreclose the option of return, that the door you are keeping at a careful distance will still be there, still open, when and if you decide to move toward it. He has been operating under that assumption for months, and in the past week, something in his system has registered that the assumption may no longer hold. Today is the 24th of June, 2026. Mars is spending its final days in Taurus before moving into Gemini on the 28th. Venus has been in Leo since the 13th of this month, bringing warmth and visibility and a particular quality of self-expression into the emotional field. Jupiter is at the edge of Cancer, preparing its own shift. This is a sky that is preparing for movement, for the things that have been operating in the interior to start becoming external in ways that can no longer be contained. For him, that process has already quietly begun. The distance he has been maintaining is running into its outer limit, and what that limit reveals is not the relief he was expecting. What it reveals is the specific pain of understanding, without being able to fully articulate it, that the thing you are successfully distancing from was real. Philip Shaver and Mario Michelintzer, two of the most significant researchers in the scientific literature on adult attachment, spent decades studying what happens in the nervous system of avoidant adults when they lose access to an attachment figure they have been maintaining distance from. What they found challenged something most people assumed about the avoidant pattern. The common understanding was that avoidant individuals were genuinely less affected by loss, that their deactivating strategies, the mechanisms by which they suppress or redirect attachment signals when they arise, produced actual emotional neutrality, that the distance they maintained was evidence of lower investment, not higher protection of a higher investment. Shaver and Michelintzer's research demonstrated something different. Avoidant individuals under conditions of perceived abandonment showed physiological stress responses at the same level as, and in some studies higher than, individuals with anxious attachment styles. The difference was not in the intensity of the response, it was in its visibility. The avoidant individual was producing the same internal activation, the same cortisol elevation, the same nervous system dysregulation, but without the external behavioral expression of that distress. The deactivating strategies were suppressing the outward signal while the internal signal ran at full intensity. He is not fine. He has been operating as though he is fine. Operating as though the distance is working, as though the strategy is producing what it was designed to produce. But underneath the managed surface of a life that looks like it has successfully moved past this, his nervous system has been tracking the connection at a level his behavioral management cannot reach. Tracking your energy, tracking the quality of your orientation toward him, tracking the subtle signal that comes through the field between two people who are bonded at the depth that twin flame connections actually operate at. In the past week, the signal changed. His nervous system has registered a shift in your field that his conscious mind does not yet have the language for. What he is experiencing is the physiological activation Shaver and Michelinzer described, a stress response to perceived loss of the attachment figure without the behavioral outlet that the anxious person has. He cannot show the distress the way the anxious person shows it. His entire relational architecture has been built around not showing it, but the distress is there, running at the same intensity it has always been there, except now without the reassurance that was stabilizing it, without the background signal of your waiting, your readiness to receive him. That signal was the proof his system had been using that the situation was still under his control. He is losing that proof now, and he can feel the loss without having the strategies to process it openly. He is not sitting quietly with it either. People with his pattern do not sit quietly with uncomfortable internal experiences. They manage them. They redirect. They find something to occupy the cognitive space before the experience has time to fully form into something they would have to deal with directly. He is probably more productive right now than he has been in weeks, because productivity is one of the most efficient management strategies available to someone who has learned not to acknowledge what he is carrying. But management is not resolution. The avoidant pattern does not reduce the internal signal through management. It suppresses the expression of it. The signal continues at the same intensity, and the longer it runs without the relief that acknowledgement would provide, the more it accumulates into something that starts to leak around the edges of the management. The leaking is starting. He is more irritable than usual in moments that should be unremarkable, more distracted in conversations that should hold his attention, more susceptible to the particular quality of late evening restlessness that arrives when the management systems have been running all day and are starting to fatigue. In that window when the management is tired, what surfaces is not the rational story he has been constructing about why the distance was the right choice. What surfaces is the image of you, the specific quality of the recognition you offered him. The way things felt when the connection was intact and the distance was not yet what it has become. The loss of something real, felt by someone who spent months convincing himself he was not losing it. Here is what he built without knowing he was building it. Over the months of this separation, while he was maintaining his distance and managing his exposure to the connection and telling himself the story about why the distance was the right choice, he was also completely outside his conscious awareness, organizing a significant portion of his internal world around the fact of you, around the specific quality of your presence in the field, around the knowledge operating below the level of thought that you were there. Object relations theory, developed through the work of Donald Winnicott and carried forward by John Bowlby, describes what it calls the internal object, the psychological representation of a significant other person that lives inside an individual's internal world, independent of that person's physical presence. The internal object is not just a memory. It is not just an image. It is an active psychological structure that organizes emotional experience, shapes expectations of relationship, and provides a background sense of security or insecurity depending on the nature of the relationship in which it was formed. He's been carrying a representation of you, of the quality of your connection, of the particular way you saw him, the specific kind of recognition you offered him that no one else in his life has offered in the same way, inside his psychological world for the entire duration of this separation. Not consciously, as a structural element of how his inner world is organized. The way a building has a particular room that you do not go into often, but that determines by its existence the quality of the whole structure. When you stopped waiting, something in the quality of that internal object shifted. Winnicott described what he called object constancy, the capacity to hold the representation of the loved person as stable and real and available in the internal world, independent of their physical presence or the current state of the external relationship. Object constancy is what allows a person to feel held by a connection even when the other person is not physically present. His object constancy for you has been functioning at a level that his behavioral distance was designed to obscure. He has been held by his internal representation of you across every day of this separation. It has been operating as psychological scaffolding, the background structure that made the distance feel sustainable because it was not really total distance. There is still the sense in the deep interior architecture of you being there. Something in that scaffolding shifted this week, and the shift is not comfortable. It does not feel like the resolution he told himself the distance would eventually produce. It does not feel like the fading of feeling he expected would happen if he just maintained enough space. It feels like the beginning of something specific and unwelcome and surprisingly loud for something he has been working so hard not to feel. He had not understood until this week how much of his sense of stability was resting on the quiet knowledge that you had not stopped caring. The full moon this month arrives on the 29th of June, 5 days from today, in Capricorn. Full moons in Capricorn carry a specific quality relevant to where you are right now. Capricorn is the sign of structure, of what has been built, of what endures. Full moons illuminate. They bring into visibility what has been developing in the interior, in the space that the mind has not yet caught up to. What this full moon is going to illuminate is the structure you have built inside yourself over the course of this journey. Not the relationship, not the external story, the internal architecture, the version of yourself that has been constructed through this process, not despite the difficulty but through it. The specific way you have been strengthened and clarified and settled in yourself by having gone through exactly what you have gone through in exactly the way you have gone through it. He is going to feel that illumination. Not because you do anything, not because you make any move or send any signal or perform the having moved on, but because what the full moon illuminates in you is visible in the field between you. Because the quality of the internal structure you have built is a signal, and that signal, arriving in his nervous system, in the window when his management is tired and the thing he has been managing is starting to surface, is going to land differently than anything you have sent before. It is going to land as real. Real in the specific way that his system recognizes as distinct from performance. Real in the way that arrives in the body before the mind has a chance to argue with it. Real in the way that his internal object of view is going to suddenly feel less like a past tense thing and more like the current tense thing it actually is. He is going to feel you not as someone who was waiting and has now stopped waiting. He is going to feel you as someone who arrived somewhere. And the particular quality of having arrived somewhere is what his system has been waiting without knowing it was waiting to register. Now here's the part that matters most to say, and that is also the hardest to hold in the middle of the experience. You do not need to manage this from your side. You do not need to make yourself less visible or more visible or to calibrate what you are putting into the field. What you have built inside yourself over these months is already doing the only thing that was ever going to move this. Not a performance of healing, not a strategy, the actual thing. The genuine internal reorganization of a person who has been through something genuinely difficult and has metabolized enough of it that the ground beneath her feels different than it did at the beginning. That is visible to him at the level where twin flame connections actually operate. The coming days between today and the full moon on the 29th carry a particular charge. Mars approaching Gemini, Venus in Leo, Jupiter at the edge of its own ingress into Leo on the 30th. These are not quiet transits. They are the energy of things becoming visible that were previously contained, of what has been developing in the interior finally having enough atmospheric pressure behind it to surface. He is inside that pressure right now. He is feeling the specific weight of understanding, without yet being able to name it cleanly, that the space you used to occupy in his field has a different quality now. Not empty, changed. And changed in a way that his distance, his management, his carefully constructed story about why none of this was what it actually was, cannot fully account for. There is something he is going to have to look at directly. Not today necessarily. Not on a schedule you can predict or control, but the full moon in Capricorn is going to illuminate what has been built, in you and in him. The structure of what has been happening in the invisible interior of this connection, while the external surface remains still. What has been built is real. He is starting to know it. The pain he is feeling when he sees that you have stopped waiting is not the pain of something ending. It is the pain of a person who has been hiding from something real understanding, for the first time in the full weight of the understanding that the real thing does not wait indefinitely. And that realization, arriving in a person who has been managing his way around it for months, is the most significant thing that could happen. It is what comes before he stops managing. Leave a like and hit subscribe if this found you. Drop. I stopped waiting for him in the comments. Tell me what has shifted for you lately. I read every comment and I will be in there this week. If you want specific eyes on your chart at this moment in your journey, the link for your Twin Flame Union personal reading is in the description. Your journey has a blueprint. Your timing has a shape. Your reading is where you see both of those things clearly. I will see you in the next one.